Hi, welcome back to our Moving Forward series. This is our fourth segment, and we are here with some of the team at Finding the More, and we are excited to share with you the topic tonight on unanswered prayers. So I know all of us have dealt with unanswered prayers. I'm sure many of you listening have dealt with that also. At some point, I think in our lives we all do. And really kind of two different viewpoints. I know when Mitzi and I were talking about unanswered prayers, there's the unanswered prayer that eventually you're thankful that it wasn't answered.
Yes.
Like you pray, and then all of a sudden God takes you somewhere else and you're like, okay, I'm glad you didn't listen to me because you knew what was going on. But then there are those unanswered prayers that you keep praying and they're still unanswered, and you don't know what God's purpose and what His plan is on all of that. And I think tonight we're going to just kind of talk about those and how each of us may have been kind of impacted by that. So I think a verse that stood out to me when I thought about unanswered prayers was Acts 4:28. And it's really about being boldful and saying, Lord, do whatever your hand and your purpose has determined in advance. And sometimes that's hard because doing whatever could totally flip our lives upside down. So to lay it all out there and say, okay, Lord, whatever it takes in this situation for your purpose and your plan. That's a hard prayer to pray sometimes. It's hard to put aside the flesh and the selfishness to say your purpose over mine. So Mitzi, we'll kind of start with you. What is unanswered prayers? What comes to mind with you?
When we first started talking about unanswered prayers, I think there's one that always comes to my mind, but I was lost even then. And it's kind of funny because even when I was lost, I didn't acknowledge that I was lost because I was someone who felt the hypocrisy of things related around that. And so I'd also been brought up by people who in no way, shape, or form lived for the Lord, as far as people around me. And the philosophy was, well, if you believe in God, then you're fine. That's how it kind of works. And I thought, well, I believe in God. I believe there was a Jesus, so I'm good. I don't have to worry about it. And I first started thinking about there was this past relationship. And it got all the way to the week before we were supposed to be married, and everything fell apart. But the more, I thought maybe, okay, Lord, I get that because I think people can relate with that. But the more that I kind of prayed over it, I'd have to say my hardest unanswered prayer was for my grandfather, because he is one of the few that was dear to me that I have no idea if he's in heaven. And I know many people in my family would say, well, he was a deacon in the church many years before I ever knew the man where I was born. Apparently he did many things in the church, but he never lived a life the entire time that I knew him that demonstrated any fruit in his life. He was rather a hateful, grumpy old man, and he was mean for the most part. I know that sounds probably horrible, but for me, he was my peepaw. And for some reason, he behaved himself when I was around. So I can remember when I got a little older and realized these things, I would go stay with my grandmother because I knew he would be nice while I was there. He wouldn't be mean to her for some reason. And I don't know if it's because he was scared of my mother, if he showed his hind end or what, but he would be nice. And then, when I was small, I remember he used to make me scared of my grandmother. He would say, she was just all these crazy things. And my grandfather didn't have hair, and so he had told us, she was so mean she ripped all his hair. And he had me out in the yard looking for it. So when I say that he displayed himself to be a mean man, he wasn't to me, but I do know that he wasn't a good man to other people. when it came time for him, he got so sick. I remember I had not been saved probably 2 years. And I remember sitting beside his bedside, and he was intubated, and then we got to take him home with the trach, so we still didn't speak. And he would just kind of wake up and grumble a little bit, but he never spoke again. And I would hold his hand, and I would sing to him, "Look what I traded for a mansion." Bless his heart. He probably was upset because I can't sing. But I would sing to him, and I would get real close beside him, and I'd hold his hand, and I would just sing, "Look what I traded for a mansion." And I would say, "Papa, oh people, have you traded it for a mansion?" I don't know the time when you were in church, but I've been told all these things, so I know you've heard the word of God. I know you know the truth, and I know you've never lived a life for God. So I need to know, when I can remember asking him to squeeze my hand or blink his eye, like it was just any little, I would have took any sign at this moment. I mean, if he would have belched, I probably would have been like, "Woo, hallelujah, that's it." He took God as his Savior. And I can remember going home and crying, and my pillow just being wet, begging God to give him one more chance.
Right.
That I knew he didn't live a life that was pleasing, and I knew he wasn't a nice man to most people. But to give him one more chance before it was over. And I can say that my grandfather's gone, and I don't know the answer to that prayer. But what I can say is that God gave me a tremendous peace right before he died, that he gave him an opportunity. So I guess in some ways it kind of was answered, and it kind of wasn't, because now I have, until the day that I get to go be with Jesus, I'll never know.
Right.
But I have peace in my heart that God gave him the opportunity. And what he chose to do with it is like everybody else. It's
their choice.
It's their choices. He had to decide at that moment what he wanted. But people say, "Well, how do you know that?" Well, I don't know it in my fleshly self, and I didn't hear it. But I can tell you the peace was so overwhelming that I trusted. And it just kind of reminded me of Lamentations. And, if you don't know, that book's kind of like the heart cry of the broken. And 3, and starting at verse 22, it says, "It is the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassion fails not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness." And I cling to that, not only for my grandfather, but for many unanswered prayers that I'm continuing to pray today. Not to say they'll never be answered, but
right.
I continue to faithfully pray today because my God is faithful. And his mercies are new every morning.
Absolutely.
And that is what I hold on to continue to pray, even if it's the 1,000th time that I've had to say it. And I know that he's heard me every single one of those 1,000 times. But he's faithful.
And it's hard sometimes to not grow weary.
Yes.
And sometimes I have to say, like, here I am again. You've heard this. I'm a little weary, but I'm going to say it again. Because they are new every morning. So I think that's a really good point. And you never know, like, that person's last chance. Like, what does it take for God to get their attention? It's different for everyone. So
yeah, and that in itself is a hard prayer.
Yeah. To know, to pray that it's going to take a lot to grab a hold of this person, whatever it takes, Lord, to use it. So it's hard. Anything for you, Cindy? Kind of unanswered prayers. That topic, kind of what came to mind.
A situation came to mind of, honestly, part of it was me being stubborn and thought that it should go a certain way. at first the situation, I was made to feel inferior and that I wasn't good enough, and it broke my spirit and broke my heart, and I couldn't understand why.
Yeah.
And there was prayer through that, and at first I wasn't giving it to God, and I was just trying to work through my emotions on my own.
Right.
It was taking it all on my own and not really stopping and taking a minute and giving it to God, because I didn't at first. But when I got to the point that I did, the situation turned around, and it ended up being even better than I had first imagined. It turned out to be a big blessing, and God showed up through that and encouraged me and reminded me that He did love me, and He was there.
He saw you.
And I just needed to settle down and trust and not get myself so worked up. And I still do that sometimes. I get myself all in a tizzy and don't stop and think. Give it to God and don't get yourself so worked up. He's going to be in it no matter what if you just hand it over to Him.
I think that's a good point, because a lot of times, like in the morning, if I'm running behind, Brody's running behind, and then we get behind something, I'm all in a tizzy, and I'm like, okay, maybe the Lord is trying to slow me down today to prevent me from something else. So you're absolutely right with that. Like, we gotta, okay, Lord, where do you want me to go?
Right. And in this, I felt like it was an unanswered prayer, because it was, at first, what I was wanting out of the situation was not going to happen. It was like, this is not happening. And instead of saying, okay, God, this is not going to happen, I got very upset, very brokenhearted. But then when I did trust Him, it came through.
Right.
And in that, Joshua 1:9 became one of my verses that I go back to. And I know I was on a softball team one year at work, and on the back of my shirt we all put like sayings or something, and mine was "Be brave." And it's that's for my reminder, because I can be introverted and I can tend to clam up and hold in, and that's my reminder to be brave and at least talk to God about it.
That's awesome. I think that's a great, be brave, talk to God.
Yes. Yes.
Put that on a t-shirt.
That's right.
Okay, good. It's so funny that you mentioned being stubborn. I'm a little bit like that, maybe a lot like that. And there's a verse, and it's actually the verse that I had for today, and it's, I wrote in my Bible, like, don't be hard-headed. And it's in Psalms 32, verses 8 and 9. And it says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will guide you with my eyes. Don't be like a horse or a mule. Don't be stubborn. Which you have no understanding, which you must be harnessed with bit and bridle. So when I first read that, I was like, oh, that's like, he could have put in parentheses, Latasha. Like, he tries to show us, and sometimes we're so hard-headed that he has to cause things to make us redirect, and sometimes it's making things so miserable. And sometimes we just want to fix it, and he's like, no, I want you to move away from this. When I think about, for me, kind of unanswered prayers, there's kind of two. One, I think I've shared before, is kind of Brody's school and just fighting to move from that. But I think the other one would be my first marriage, of like, Lord, just fix this, and I'm praying, even though I'm not saved, like, fix my marriage, and I just couldn't understand, like, why He didn't. Well, today I know why He didn't, because I have a second marriage and a son, and He had a much bigger plan. I just needed to get out of the way, and stop being that hard-headed, in that situation. And I think, thinking about, kind of that last chance of people getting saved, and, you know, I think about my dad, and my grandma prayed many years, you know, for my dad to be saved. And it took him getting cancer, you know, and I know she prayed that bold prayer, whatever it takes to get his attention, you know, and it's hard as a mother to pray that.
It is.
You know, to pray that prayer for your family, but that's what it took. And it was a random nurse, you know, on the floor that shared with my dad, who was a very mean and scary man. You know, like me and my mom had stepped out of the room to go down to the cafeteria and came back and like, he's crying. We're thinking, oh my gosh, he's dying. Like somebody's, and he just couldn't get the words out that, you know, this man had shared the gospel and it forever changed, you know, but that's what it took.
Yeah.
It was like, you're gonna lose your life, and where do you want to decide to be? What do you want to trade your mansion for? You know, as you said. So I think sometimes it's hard to pray those prayers, knowing what could happen to a family member. But knowing what happens here doesn't matter. It's what happens on the other side.
It's eternity that matters.
Eternity that matters. So, I mean, for me, those were the kind of the things that stuck out. Sometimes we look back and like, gosh, so glad he didn't answer that prayer. But there's still a lot of prayers, like you mentioned, that, you know, I'm praying today and I still don't have any answers for.
Right.
You know, just keep praying and keep praying, and
We can't grow weary.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have to continue to know that it's his timing. And trust. I think that's the biggest. Most of us, we like to say we trust, but we trust when things are going our way.
Right.
And when it doesn't happen in our time or our way, or, you know, that trust kind of gets a little bit thin and weary.
And I think sometimes, a lot of times, it's like you're almost making deals. Like, okay, Lord, I'm going to do this now, and maybe you'll answer this prayer.
Yes.
But he's not a conditional. You know, it's in his time, in his purpose for all of that.
And he's got a bigger plan. You know, we think we see the whole picture. You know, we know our kids, we know our family, we know our jobs, we know our this, and he's like, oh, bless you. No, you don't have a clue, because I can tell you, I would have never told you we would all be sitting here with this. I saw the big picture many years ago, so, you know.
I think I'm excited, like, to get to heaven one day and he'd be like, just sit down. Let's watch a little movie. You know, kind of like, if you had done this, this is where your life is.
That would be sad in a way, too.
It would, but like, here is why the dominoes had to fall this way.
Right.
Like, I want to see it all pieced together. Like, take me through the journey of that. So I think that's going to be exciting. Jamie, anything comes to mind for you for unanswered prayers?
So, speaking of timing, God's timing, I've had a lot of things that I could have written down to talk about. My verse, I want to touch on that first, is Psalm 27:14. And it says, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So the hardest thing for, I'm sure, a lot of us is to wait. Sit and wait. Knowing what you want it to be or what you think it should be, and have to sit and wait on God to give an answer or to see something happen. After Elena was born, with her needing physical therapy and speech therapy and things like that, I was still working full time, and it became hard for me to send her to daycare knowing she had therapists coming to see her there, and I couldn't be a part of it. Sorry. They would write little notes, and it wasn't the same because I wanted to see what she was learning so we could do it at home. I felt like I wasn't being a good mom to a special needs child, and it didn't make sense why God would give her to us knowing we couldn't handle it. Now I'm seeing that we can, because we have to rely on Him. It's not easy by no means, but we have to rely on Him. And so my prayer after she was born was to help me find a new job. Can I have a new job where I can work part-time, take her to therapy, and be a part of that? And the job never came. I went on interviews and they just weren't right, whether it was for the schedule or pay or whatever it was. It just didn't work out. And I had to wait. Because about 2 years later, a friend of mine that I hadn't spoken with in several years contacted me and said, would you be interested in a part-time position at the office I run at the doctor's office? And I said, yes, by all means, yes.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Right. So I went and interviewed, and they offered me the job, and I accepted. But while I was waiting to have my last day at my current job then, my mom was granted early retirement, which she had been asking for at least 6 months. And they said, we'll let you have early retirement now. And so with that, I was able to work part-time and help with Elena's therapy on the days I do work. My mom takes her, so I don't have to send her to daycare. It just all worked out. And that was an answered prayer, but it was unanswered for over a year.
Right.
And I had to wait. And that was hard, but.
And I think that verse, like for me, being hard-headed, anytime he repeats, so like he starts that with wait on the Lord, and at the end, wait on the Lord.
Say
So
it again.
say it again, just want to make sure you heard me. So I think that's a really good verse for when you're waiting on unanswered prayers.
Definitely.
It's his timing.
Right.
Absolutely. So Kim, anything kind of comes to mind for unanswered prayers for you?
Well, I have a big unanswered prayer, but I've learned lately that knowing I can trust him is my treasure. So, and as you get older and you mature with the Lord, I think you learn quickly to go to God with prayer. I know I was having a problem today, and it was like, I'm just going to stop and pray about this because I'm not going to go any further. And immediately it just changed everything. And it was like, wow, that's how much he loves us. And I was sitting here thinking, as you guys talked, how much we forfeit
Absolutely.
by not going to him in prayer and asking for things. And it's very hard when you have to wait. And you don't understand. But I guess after so many years of waiting and not understanding, it sort of gets easier because you don't have a choice, really. Because I don't feel like the door's been closed to my unanswered prayer. But at the same time, it hasn't been answered that I know of.
Right.
So you feel like you still have to keep praying and keep believing, and it's his will. It's his plan. He's got a plan for me, and just know that I'm good with that.
And sometimes in that waiting, he's doing work on us.
Yes,
Right.
he is.
Like
We're not ready for it. Sometimes
No,
if we would get the
exactly.
things we ask for when we ask for them, we would mess it all up.
yeah.
We would make a hot mess of something in a heartbeat. And then we'd be fussing at the Lord about, why'd you give me this? I'm
not ready for this.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's a reason.
Right, there's a maturity thing. He's got to prepare you. And sometimes it has to do with that relationship. That, will you love me anyway? Will you trust me? And it's growth. Even though we think that sometimes we're being punished or I'm doing something wrong, this is not happening, there's a reason for it. There's a season that we have to go through sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like Cindy said, he trying to do it all in yourself.
Right.
So he makes you wait or go through those things to realize that, okay, I got to turn to him.
Right. It's like I said too, I mean, when you get into the habit of going to him in prayer, instead of trying to carry the weight of this world, no matter how small.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing how he wants to hear from us, and sometimes he'll just answer real quickly just to let you know, I hear you.
I'm here.
I see you, and I can take care of you if you just bring it to me. So,
But I think a lot of times we try to just put it all on. And
Right.
we put another, rock in my wagon. We put that when he doesn't intend for us to kind of carry.
And sometimes
all
I
this.
think we think he's busy, or my need's not that important compared to all the other needs going up to him right now. So I'll just handle this myself. And I found he's big enough to take care of
Big
everybody's
guy.
needs.
He wants to know everything.
You know, he wants to know everything, and that's how that relationship grows with him. I mean, that's how you bond. That's how you trust him. Sometimes I don't hesitate. It's like I just want to ask him. Just
I
want to
think
go to him.
Mhm.
That's the, probably the best advice is just go to him
Just go
and
to
be honest. Pour out your heart.
Mhm.
Because
Just let it go.
as we talk, he already knows.
He knows.
He knows that you're mad or you're angry or you're frustrated or all of that, and just kind of pour it all out at his feet.
Right. And he can help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, out of anyone that you can go to when you have a need or you're in trouble, he's the one that can help the most.
Because I think he can give you that unspeakable peace.
Mm-hmm.
That peace, you can't describe that to anybody. Of like, no, I didn't hear him, but I know.
Sometimes you do though. I mean, people say you can't hear him, but I can hear him sometimes. It's just he may not be speaking out loud,
Right.
but you can just hear him, and it's awesome.
Absolutely. I think we have to be tuned in
Mm-hmm.
for that. If we're busy just moving and moving, we miss hearing from him.
And I think that brings up a good point too, because I think some people, when they pray, they do all the talking. It seems like in my prayer, sometimes you're just overwhelmed, and you just sort of go to him and you just throw it out there, and then you're like, Lord, I don't even know what to say, and you get quiet, and it's in that quiet time that he's speaking to you, and you're like, wow, maybe I should be quiet more often,
Yeah.
But I mean, I think sometimes we just need to maybe listen a little bit more in the prayer time.
I think what you just said of like, we blurred all this stuff out, and I think about the picture you sent. It's that little picture, and it's like, dear God, and then it's all the jumbled letters. And he's like, I understand, child. Like,
Right.
he gets it, regardless of how jumbled up and, of a mess that our prayers are to him. He's listening through that.
He understands tears. He understands wailing.
I think sometimes too we don't just pray and ask God to do what God wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I like to solve things and know things and plan things and have extra plans in case those plans don't work, which I'm doing well not to. But in that, I find that God's revealed to me here lately that I find when I ask Him about something or I pray for someone, I then go like right behind it and try to tell Him how He needs
Time to go here.
And it's not even that I need Him to do it that way as it is I feel like maybe I need to know the solution that I'm asking for. Like He's expecting me to not only pray to Him, but also tell Him how to fix it. I know
Here's
that-
the problem.
yes.
Here's the solution.
And God doesn't need that. And I think that sometimes falls into our unanswered prayers. Because some prayers I believe get answered. It's just not the answer we told Him to give us. So it takes us a while to look back and go, oh, okay, God, yeah, you answered that much better than what I laid out for you. But it's learning to just say, God, here it is. And I have no idea. But I know you're a big God and you do. So you showed me the answer. You showed me the solutions. And even if I don't like them, you help me to obey them.
Right.
And I have an example of that. I was not real happy with my husband one night, and I was praying about it. And God commenced to tell me how I should handle the situation. Needless to say, it was not what I wanted to hear. Didn't really like it. But when I thought about it, he was absolutely right. It was like I never saw it from that perspective. But yes, I mean, sometimes it was like, no. Yes. So You're right. Sometimes it's just not what we want to hear. It's not what we want to do. But he answers.
He does, absolutely. So I want to thank you ladies for kind of sharing about unanswered prayers. We'd love to hear from you at Finding the More of, if there's a prayer that we can help be, in prayer with you, share that with us. You can contact us through our website at findingthemore.org, and that kind of links to all of our social platforms. But we would love to hear from you of how you're moving forward from your unanswered prayers. So from our family to yours, God bless.